First contact deception. Dr. Sarah Chen stared through the quantum microscope at what could be humanity's greatest discovery, or its worst nightmare. The alien cell structure shouldn't have been possible, yet there it was, shifting and adapting before her eyes in ways that defied known biology. Behind her, the secure lab at the International Space Research Center hummed with activity as other scientists analyzed their own samples from the Confederation's goodwill package. Dr. Chen, you need to see this, called Dr. James Martinez, her colleague in xenogenetics. His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. Sarah pulled away from her microscope and crossed the lab, her heart pounding. On James's holographic display, a simulation showed the alien cells interacting with human DNA. The results made her blood run cold. "This isn't a gift," she whispered. "It's a test." The Galactic Confederation had arrived 6 months ago, their massive ships appearing in perfect formation above Earth's major cities. They'd brought promises of advanced technology, medical breakthroughs, and membership in their ancient alliance of species. Humanity had celebrated, believing they'd finally joined the galactic community. Sarah had been among the optimistic ones, eagerly accepting the role of lead researcher for the exchange program. Now, watching the simulation play out, she realized how naive they'd all been. The medical advances the Confederation offered weren't meant to help humanity. They were probes, testing human genetic adaptability on a massive scale. A sudden commotion at the lab's entrance drew her attention. Admiral Helena Torres strode in, flanked by security personnel. The usually composed military leader looked shaken. "Dr. Chen, we need to talk. Now." She gestured to a secure conference room. Inside, Helena activated the quantum privacy field before speaking. "We've intercepted communications between the Confederation ships. What you've discovered in the lab, it's just the beginning." She placed a data crystal on the table. They'd done this before, to dozens of species. The holographic display sprang to life, showing planet after planet, species after species. In each case, the pattern was the same. First contact offered advancement, genetic testing, and then Sarah felt sick as she saw the final stages of the Confederation's membership program. "They're farming us," Helena said quietly, "testing our adaptability, seeing how our genetics respond to their manipulations. The species that show the most promising results are," she paused, "harvested. Their genetic material used to enhance the Confederation's own species." Sarah thought of the celebrating crowds outside, the hope in people's eyes when they looked up at the alien ships. "We have to warn everyone." "We can't," Helena replied. "Not yet. The Confederation monitors everything. If they realize we know." She left the sentence unfinished. "We need to be smarter than them. We need to turn their own game against them." Sarah looked at the data again, her scientific mind already racing ahead. "Their genetic testing goes both ways," she said slowly. "Every sample they take, every test they run, it tells us about them too. And they've given us access to their basic medical technology." Helena's eyes narrowed. "Can you use it?" "Better." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. "I can improve it. They think we're primitive, that we'll just accept their technology without understanding it. But human genetics has some unique properties they haven't encountered before, properties we've been studying for decades." For the next hour, they planned. The Confederation had chosen Earth because humans showed remarkable genetic adaptability. But they didn't understand that this same adaptability had led humanity to develop genetic science far beyond what the aliens suspected possible. "We'll need time," Sarah said finally, "and resources, and a way to contact other species they've targeted without the Confederation knowing." Helena nodded. "You'll have everything you need. The Confederation thinks they're studying us. Let's show them just how adaptable humans can be." As Sarah returned to her lab, she glanced up through the window at the Confederation ships gleaming in the sky. They looked different now. Not bearers of gifts, but predators circling their prey. But humans hadn't survived and thrived on Earth by being easy prey. The Confederation would learn that some species weren't meant to be harvested. Some species fought back, and humanity was about to show the galaxy just how dangerous underestimating Earth could be. The hidden agenda. The underground facility beneath the Antarctic ice sheet buzzed with activity. 3 months had passed since Dr. Sarah Chen's discovery, and humanity's response was taking shape in secret chambers carved deep below the surface. Sarah watched through reinforced glass as robotic assemblers constructed what could be humanity's salvation, or its greatest gamble. Project Phoenix is ahead of schedule, Dr. Martins reported, his breath frosting in the cold air. The genetic recombination matrices are performing beyond expectations. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the shimmering field of quantum-stabilized DNA strands floating in the central chamber. The Confederation's gift of basic genetic manipulation technology had been a Trojan horse meant to test human adaptability. Instead, it had given humanity the final pieces needed for a breakthrough they'd been approaching for decades. "Show me the latest results," she said, following James to a secure terminal. The data scrolling across the screen would have been meaningless to most, but to Sarah it told a story of revolution. Human scientists hadn't just understood the alien technology, they'd transformed it. Admiral Torres entered the chamber, accompanied by a figure Sarah had never expected to see in person, General John Way, head of Earth's newly formed Unified Defense Command. His presence meant things had escalated. "Dr. Chen," Zhang said without preamble, "we've intercepted more communications. The Confederation is moving up their timetable. They're not just studying us anymore, they're preparing for harvest." Sarah's fingers tightened on the edge of the console. "How long?" 3 months, maybe less. Helena pulled up a tactical display showing Confederation fleet movements. "They're positioning harvest ships at these coordinates. Once they're in place..." "We're ready," Sarah interrupted. "Ahead of schedule, actually. Project Phoenix works. We can do more than just resist their genetic manipulations. We can reverse engineer them, create our own variations, better ones." Zhang's eyebrows rose. "Show me." Sarah led them to a sealed chamber where a volunteer from the Military Science Division waited. Lieutenant Maria Santos had been the first to test the new protocols, and the results were extraordinary. As they watched through the observation window, Maria demonstrated abilities that should have been impossible: cellular regeneration, enhanced strength, accelerated neural processing. "The Confederation's genetic modifications are crude compared to what we've developed," Sarah explained. "They try to force changes through external manipulation. We found a way to work with human DNA's natural adaptability, to guide it rather than override it." "And the side effects?" Zhang asked sharply. "None." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "That's what makes our approach superior. We're not fighting human nature. We're enhancing what's already there. Every modification is stable, controllable, and most importantly, transferable." Helena's eyes widened at that last word. "Transferable, you mean?" "We can share these advances with other species." Sarah pulled up another display showing simulated interactions with various alien genetic structures. "The Confederation maintains power by keeping their subject species dependent on them for genetic improvements. But our method works with any compatible DNA structure. We could help other harvested species free themselves." Zhang studied the data in silence for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "You understand what you're proposing. This isn't just resistance, it's revolution. If we do this, we're not just fighting for Earth, we're challenging the entire foundation of Confederation power." "They gave us no choice," Sarah replied quietly. "They came to our world under the guise of friendship, planning to turn us into raw material for their genetic experiments. How many other species have they done this to? How many more will suffer if someone doesn't stop them?" The general nodded slowly. "Very well. Accelerate the program. I want as many soldiers enhanced as possible before they realize what we're doing. Admiral Torres, begin Operation Shadow Protocol." "Dr. Chen." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Prepare your team to go off-world. If we're going to save other species, they'll need your expertise. As the others left to implement the new orders, Sarah remained in the observation room, watching Maria continue her exercises. The lieutenant moved with inhuman grace now, every motion precise and powerful. But unlike the Confederation's crude modifications, she remained fully herself. Her humanity enhanced, not erased. The Confederation thought they were the masters of genetic manipulation, that their millennia of experience made them invincible. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their DNA. It was in their determination to fight back against injustice, their ability to turn enemies' weapons against them, and their willingness to help others rise up against their oppressors. The harvest ships were coming. But this time, the hunters were about to become the hunted. Breaking chains. The Confederation research station orbiting Proxima Centauri appeared abandoned, its navigation lights dark against the star-filled backdrop. Inside, Dr. Sarah Chen moved silently through the corridors, her enhanced physiology allowing her to see clearly in the low light. Behind her, Lieutenant Santos and 3 other modified soldiers secured their route of advance. Security systems are looped. James Martinez's voice whispered through their neural comms. He was back on their cloaked ship, coordinating the infiltration. You've got 10 minutes before the next patrol. Sarah reached the main laboratory and placed her palm against the security scanner. The stolen Confederation codes worked perfectly. The door slid open without alarm. Inside, she found exactly what they'd hoped for. Row after row of genetic samples from dozens of species. They're all here, she subvocalized through the neural link. Every species the Confederation has harvested or marked for harvesting. She began downloading the data while her team set up quantum transmitters around the lab. A sound from the corridor made them freeze. Patrol's early, Maria warned, taking up position by the door. Sarah worked faster, watching the download progress. The plan relied on perfect timing. They needed to not just steal the data, but use the Confederation's own communication network to broadcast the truth to every harvested world simultaneously. The patrol was almost at the lab door when Maria's enhanced hearing picked up something else. They're running. Something's wrong. James's voice crackled with urgency. Multiple Confederation ships just dropped out of FTL. This isn't a patrol base. It's a trap. Sarah's heart raced, but her enhanced mind stayed clear, calculating options. How long until the download completes? 3 minutes. They'll be here in 2, Maria reported. Sarah made her decision. James, execute Protocol Omega. Maria, get ready to give them a demonstration of human hospitality. The lab door burst open. Confederation security forces rushed in, weapons raised, and stopped short. Their sensors showed an empty room. Impossible, the lead officer said. They were just here, looking for us. Maria's voice came from behind them. The Confederation forces spun around, firing energy weapons at the source of the sound. Their shots passed through empty air. The truth dawned on the officer too late. Humanity hadn't just enhanced their bodies. They'd developed ways to manipulate the Confederation's own sensor technology. The intruders hadn't vanished. The security team's augmented reality displays had been hacked. The fight was brief and decisive. When it ended, Sarah stepped over the unconscious guards and returned to the console. Download complete. James? Broadcasting now. Every Confederation communication hub just lit up like a supernova. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, the truth began to spread. The Confederation's genetic research data, their harvest lists, their experiments, all of it transmitted simultaneously to the very species they'd victimized. But more importantly, humanity included something else in the transmission. The key to freedom. Your modifications, a Drachnid scientist breathed, studying the data in his hidden laboratory. They're beautiful, simple, perfect. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as subjugated species discovered that humans hadn't just found a way to resist the Confederation. They'd found a way to undo generations of genetic manipulation and dependency. On the station, Sarah's team made their way back to their ship. They'd chosen this base for their first major strike carefully. Its position made it a perfect relay point for their broadcast. But they'd known it would be a one-way trip. Multiple Confederation warships on approach, James reported. They're charging weapons. Sarah strapped into her crash seat as Maria took the pilot's controls. Now we see if the rest of the plan works. Send the signal. Across 12 star systems, hidden resistance cells activated. Species that had suffered under Confederation control for generations rose up simultaneously, using humanity's genetic innovations to break their chains. The Confederation's carefully maintained hierarchy of power began to crack. They're firing, James called out. Maria smiled grimly. Good. Show them what else humans can do with their technology. The ship's quantum drive engaged, but not to flee. They'd modified it based on principles reverse-engineered from Confederation tech. As the enemy ships opened fire, Maria activated their new drive configuration. Space itself seemed to hiccup. When it normalized, the Confederation ships found themselves firing on each other, their targeting systems thoroughly confused by the quantum displacement field humanity had developed. Back to Earth, Sarah ordered as they slipped away from the chaos. Phase 1 is complete. She looked at the data they'd stolen, thinking of all the species who were now receiving it. The Confederation had thought they were being clever, testing humanity's adaptability. They hadn't realized they were proving exactly why humans were the wrong species to underestimate. Humanity hadn't just adapted to survive the Confederation's tests. They'd adapted to beat them at their own game. And they'd done something the Confederation had never considered. They'd found a way to help others adapt too. The real war was just beginning. But for the first time in centuries, the harvested species of the galaxy had hope. Not just of survival, but of freedom. Desperate measures. High Counselor Vexterra of the Confederation stood before the emergency session, his crystalline form pulsing with barely contained rage. The holographic displays surrounding him showed scenes of chaos across Confederation space. Research stations destroyed, harvest ships sabotaged, subject species rising in open rebellion. The humans must be eliminated, he declared. Not harvested, destroyed. They've contaminated everything we've built over millennia with their adaptability. He spat the last word like a curse. In orbit above Earth, the largest Confederation battle fleet ever assembled dropped out of FTL. 5,000 ships, gathered from across their territory, prepared to end the human threat once and for all. Admiral Torres watched them arrive from the bridge of the EFS Defiant. Right on schedule, she said quietly. Dr. Chen. Sarah looked up from her console, where she'd been monitoring the quantum network connecting Earth's defenders. All enhanced personnel are in position. The network is stable. She paused, checking another reading. And our allies are ready. The Confederation fleet launched their first wave. Biological weapons designed to target human genetic structures. They'd learned from their previous encounters, creating weapons that should bypass humanity's enhanced defenses. But humans weren't the only ones waiting for them. Across Earth's orbit, ships began appearing. Vessels of all sizes and designs, crewed by species the Confederation had victimized over centuries. The Drachnid, with their advanced energy manipulation. The Zorax, masters of quantum engineering. The Myrians, whose biological technology rivaled the Confederation's own. All had received humanity's genetic innovations, and all had chosen to stand with Earth. They actually came, James breathed, watching the Allied fleet take position alongside Earth's defenders. Of course they came, Sarah replied. The Confederation never understood. When you help others rise instead of forcing them to submit, they stand with you by choice. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The Confederation unleashed everything they had. Genetic weapons, quantum disruption fields, temporal distortion bombs. But each attack found their opponents prepared, countered by defenses developed through the combined knowledge of a dozen liberated species. On his flagship, High Counselor Vexterra watched in growing horror as his fleet's advantages evaporated one by one. Impossible. They're primitives. How can they be defeating our best weapons? The answer came in a transmission that broke through their strongest encryptions. Sarah Chen's face appeared on every Confederation ship's command display. "You never understood us," she said calmly. "You saw our adaptability as a resource to be harvested. You never considered that we might adapt specifically to defeat you." As if to emphasize her words, Earth's defenders demonstrated their next innovation. The quantum network linking their enhanced soldiers extended across ships, allowing them to coordinate with inhuman precision. Where the Confederation fought as a hierarchy, the Allies fought as a single organism, each part supporting the others perfectly. "Fall back," Vexterra ordered as another wave of his ships succumbed to weapons he'd never seen before. Human innovations combined with technology from other species, creating entirely new ways to fight. Full retreat. But retreat wasn't an option. The Allied fleet had encircled them, using FTL tactics the humans had developed. The Confederation's mighty armada found itself trapped between Earth's gravity well and a wall of ships crewed by those they'd once victimized. Sarah watched from the Defiant as the Confederation fleet realized their situation. Final phase, she ordered through the quantum network. Throughout the Allied fleet, enhanced crews activated devices that humanity had been preparing since they first discovered the Confederation's true nature. Quantum fields wrapped around the enemy ships, not to destroy them, but to do something far worse, to cut them off from their own genetic modifications. The Confederation's carefully engineered superiority began to unravel. "What have you done?" Vexterra's voice shook as he felt his enhanced abilities fade. "We've given you a choice," Sarah replied. "Surrender and face justice for your crimes against sentient species, or retreat to your core worlds. Either way, your days of harvesting others are over." The battle ended not with the destruction of the Confederation fleet, but with their humiliation. Stripped of their genetic advantages, facing the combined might of their former victims, they fled back to their territory. But this wasn't the end. Sarah knew the Confederation would never accept defeat easily. They would regroup, try to find ways around the quantum fields, attempt to restore their genetic modifications. The war would continue. The difference was, they would never again fight alone. The species of the galaxy had learned that unity and mutual aid were stronger than forced submission. The Confederation had spent millennia building an empire through fear and genetic manipulation. Humanity had shown the galaxy a better way, one built on cooperation, shared advancement, and the strength that comes from helping others rise. A new dawn. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the great chamber of the newly established Galactic Coalition. The massive hall, built on a neutral world, housed representatives from over 300 species, former victims of the Confederation united in their determination to build something better. The Drachnid ambassador approached her before the session began, his scaled form moving with the natural grace his species had reclaimed. "The last Confederation holdout world surrendered this morning," he informed her. "Their leadership is being brought to face trial for their crimes." Sarah nodded, but her attention was on the younger representatives entering the chamber. Species that had been considered too primitive for Confederation membership now stood as equals, their unique perspectives and innovations contributing to a growing renaissance of galactic civilization. Admiral Torres, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Coalition, joined them. "The quarantine fields around Confederation space are holding. Their attempts to recreate their genetic modifications have failed. It turns out their superiority was always more fragile than they knew." "And the former harvest worlds?" Sarah asked. "Thriving." Helena's face showed rare satisfaction. "The shared database of genetic research you established has helped dozens of species recover from generations of manipulation. They're rediscovering their natural evolutionary paths." The chamber fell quiet as General Zhang took the podium. Though he now served as Earth's primary representative to the Coalition, he had insisted that today's presentation come from the scientific team. "Dr. Chen," he said simply, "your report, please." Sarah walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display sprang to life around her. It showed the galaxy as it now existed, not divided into Confederation-controlled space and harvest worlds, but alive with collaboration and exchange. 1 year ago, she began, we faced an enemy that believed power came from controlling others. They saw diversity as something to be harvested, different species as resources to be exploited. They were wrong. The display shifted, showing the incredible advances that had emerged from cooperation between formerly isolated species. Medical breakthroughs, environmental restoration techniques, new forms of faster-than-light travel. Each discovery built on the strengths of multiple cultures working together. Humanity's gift wasn't just breaking the Confederation's power, she continued. It was showing that true strength comes from lifting each other up. Every species has unique perspectives, unique abilities. When we share those freely instead of hoarding them, we all grow stronger. Lieutenant Maria Santos, now heading the Coalition's security force, stepped forward to present the military aspects. The former Confederation worlds had been contained, their leadership brought to justice, but the focus was on prevention rather than punishment. Never again would one group be allowed to dominate others through genetic manipulation or any other means. The Confederation's greatest fear has been realized, Maria said, but not in the way they imagined. They feared that sharing power would make them weak. Instead, our combined strength has created something far greater than their empire ever was. The session continued, but Sarah's mind drifted to her lab, where teams of scientists from dozens of species now work together. Their current project involved helping the Marians, one of the most damaged harvest species, restore genetic diversity to their population. But they weren't doing it through forced modification. Instead, they were using techniques developed collaboratively, respecting the Marians' natural biology, while helping them heal. Quite a change from when we first met the Confederation, James commented, joining her as the session ended. Remember how impressed we were by their ships? Sarah smiled. We were impressed by shadows and lies. Real advancement doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from growing together. Outside the chamber, the sky was filled with ships of all designs. Trade vessels, research ships, diplomatic shuttles, all moving freely, all contributing to a galaxy finding its way forward together. The Confederation had thought they were testing humanity's adaptability. Instead, they had inadvertently revealed humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn enemies into allies, to transform competition into cooperation, to take the very weapons used against them and reshape them into tools for universal progress. The age of harvest was over. The age of mutual growth had begun. And if new threats emerge, they would face not a dominated hierarchy of controlled worlds, but a galaxy united in genuine strength, the strength that comes from choosing to stand together. High above, Earth's first diplomatic vessel prepared to depart for a newly contacted civilization at the galaxy's edge. Its mission was not to judge their development or test their worth, but to offer friendship, to share knowledge freely, and to invite them to join a community where every voice mattered and every species could reach their full potential. The harvest ships were gone, replaced by vessels of exploration and exchange. The time of fear had ended, and humanity, once targeted for exploitation, had helped forge a galaxy where adaptation meant not just survival, but universal flourishing. It was, Sarah reflected, watching the ships rise into the darkening sky, exactly the kind of ending the Confederation would never have imagined, and precisely the future humanity had always dreamed of reaching.